The Wisbech Canal was abandoned in 1926 and remained in a derelict state until the 1960s, when it was filled to allow for the A1101 road without destroying the town centre. The rest, including this stretch of towpath, was used as landfill. Much of the waste that went into this landfill is unknown. Today, what was once a landfill site is a managed stretch of public footpath that is not without its politics. As I was walking my dog, I noticed that it was becoming overgrown with weeds, hanging over the path, the grass getting long, seating areas unusable, being enveloped by the undergrowth. I wanted to know who's responsible for maintaining the path and why it hadn't been done.
And so they all of a sudden came in and virtually bulldozed the whole area. Council workers would come in every so often and clear it. All of a sudden we realised that nothing was being done, that it hadn't been cleared down there. It was getting all wild again. And so we then said, well, if you're going to purchase it, we'll form the group to volunteers to maintain it. Well, I'm now thinking, when you see how it is now, how overgrown it is, you see now that it was as bad as that last year, and it took us all the winter gatherings together to get it cleared.
With this information, I decided that I wanted to draw attention to the work that the Friends of Elm and Emneth Towpath do, and start a conversation that could potentially bring volunteers to the organisation to ensure a welcoming, safe place for people to enjoy outdoor spaces. Illustrating the journey I felt was key to communicating the towpath's purpose use now, contrary to its historical use. I tried initially to place a second-hand trail cam along the path and began to look at the philosophical and ethical implications of surveillance and imaging practices where the human is absent. The absence of human decision or action reflecting the effects of such on this public right-of-way. The unreliable nature of these devices soon became apparent, and I had to abandon that idea. It did, however, lead me to consider the path's use outside of daylight hours. Continuing to think about the journey I was taking, I decided that this project needed an expression of time, and I began to experiment with long exposures as I was walking the path at night. The ethereal results of this experiment reminded me of reflections in the water that can be seen as you walk along the remaining stretch of the canal from Mountwell. The hazy images reminiscent of Corinne Viennet's work, although the practice and sentiment being completely different. The effective layering of the same subject from slightly different angles, although achieved in a single exposure. This practice felt unrefined to me, and I desired a deliberate way to illustrate the passage along the towpath while highlighting points of contention along the way. Taking inspiration from Vittor Schietti and his work in permanent sculptures, I was captivated by the notion of threads of energy, connecting everything. A primordial force, one that penetrates and emanates from everything. Vittor's musings on the power of collective thought and its ability to change the future mirror my own beliefs that through positive action can make change possible. Using light in this manner, I could illustrate the journey and draw attention to areas of the towpath that create the most friction. Using a battery-powered torch and a rechargeable tube light, I used up to 15-minute exposures to highlight the path's route and simulate sparks emanating from various objects. The telegraph poles that line the entire path are a constant reminder of how unnatural this area is, with the light trails visualizing the electric signals being transmitted and the metaphorical suggestion of the contentious issues, such as whose responsibility is it to empty the dog bin. Keen not to buy anything new for this project, I made a conscious decision to only use equipment and resources I already owned or that I could source sustainably. I own a Fuji X-T5 which I use for the majority of my photography, but I do own and use vintage film cameras regularly. The environmental impact of manufacturing a Fuji X-T5 involves several factors relating to the source extraction, production processes, and energy consumption. Fujifilm has made significant efforts to minimise these impacts through various sustainability initiatives. The metals, plastic and glass which go into making the X-T5 require energy-intensive processes. However, Fuji have implemented measures to improve the environmental performance of their manufacturing processes. They use environmentally conscious production methods and are working towards energy-efficient manufacturing facilities, which helps to reduce CO2 emissions and energy consumption. Their Sustainable Value Plan 2030 lays down their intentions to address climate change, promote recycling of resources, conservation and chemical safety. Although the debate surrounding the sustainability of digital versus film is ongoing, and neither can be considered undamaging, it is important to consider the impact we have as individuals in the choices we make. I have decided to take a reduction-first approach to this project, choosing not to produce any waste material needlessly and minimising carbon emissions by walking to all my research locations. This project feels like a contradiction in that it is an attempt to rally people together to protect an area that is naturally trying to rewild itself, whilst also destroying that natural process so that it can be enjoyed. The biodiversity that the area encourages needs to be considered. The habitats for insects, animals and plant life all balance themselves until humans intervene. Is it a natural area, old canal path or landfill site, or is it merely a public right-of-way? Thinking of a way to present this project, I felt was quite difficult. Reducing waste or limiting physical products was forefront in my mind. My first instinct was to produce prints or a photo book, but realised that this would not reach the audience I was trying to inspire. Most of the towpath users are locals, and I needed a method of delivery that would reach them. And most of the users make suggestions and comments pertaining to the towpath via social media. Releasing the images on an online gallery seemed the most logical way forward. In order to achieve this, I used the Polycam app on my mobile phone. With this app, I was able to create three-dimensional renders of parts of the towpath and then import them into Adobe After Effects, where I could then display the still images. Using this virtual space, I was then able to arrange my photographs within it and then move a virtual camera within that space to guide the viewer around. By presenting my work in this way, I hope to draw attention to the space virtually as a reminder of what is available beyond the computer screen.